Okay, so he said we learned this another shtick of Kedushas Levi. Let's learn it. So Mashim Makshim Toisvus Lamed Mevarchim motzei Yom Tov al besamim. Alright, in the other video I explained a little bit what Havdalah is, so I'm not going to go over that again, but the question that Toisvus asks is how come we do not make a bracha on besamim motzei Yom Tov? So we're going to assume that you know what I'm talking about here. So the kasha is on this. I'm going to talk yeshivish now. Is that why? Because it's a little bit easier to teach a shtickle, a dvar Torah in yeshivish sprach. So if there's no neshama yisera on Yantiv, so if Shabbos falls on Yantiv, we shouldn't make a bracha on besamim either. We do. So why? So that's a kasha. So in the piyutim, in the liturgical hymns, in the Yotzres, Pesach and Shabbos Hagadol, we say by the Haggadah as well. There's the Makoros of these Smiras. We have a stira and we have a teretz on the stira, because there seems to be a stira in the piyutim. So in one of the Zmiras, one of the Yotzres, it says that Avram Avinu, that our patriarch Abraham, circumcised himself on Pesach. And there's another place in the liturgy where it says that Avram Avinu circumcised himself on Yom Kippur. So how do we rectify this apparent contradiction? On the first day of every month, you have this concept that all of the worlds are accepting God as their king over them. And on Pesach you have this idea of the love of the Creator, the love of God. That we, the creatures, the creations, have love for God. On Rosh Hashanah, it's that we all are in awe and fear of God. Shavuos and Sukkot are different concepts. We do various things on Shavuos and Sukkot, so in a manner of speaking, that God should enjoy us. We're giving nachas and tainik to the Bes Shefer, to the Creator. And the truth is, any time of the year, if you are connected to the love of God and you're arousing one's love for God, you have a connection and you're accomplishing in the higher world in accordance with the level that is accomplished on Pesach. In this concept of loving God. That the same thing, any time of the year that we accomplish these things, the fear of God, that God is King, etc., we are connecting to those holidays and accomplishing the same things that we accomplish on the holidays. However, you cannot make that day into Pesach. To make all those days according to the level that it has, meaning if you have a love of God on another day, that doesn't make the day Pesach. That's impossible. It's impossible to actually make it Pesach, but what you could do, because we're living in this world, the world of action, we all have to, the whole Klal Yisrael has to be following the halachas of Pesach for it to be Pesach. But in the higher worlds, it could be Pesach-dik. And also to do the mitzvahs, to make Yantiv, also it's impossible until the whole Klal Yisrael is on this level. Abraham was one person. That when in the book of Ezekiel chapter 33 verse 24 it says Abraham was only one person, means to say he was all alone in his devotion to God. Everyone else were pagans, were idolaters, and Abraham was all alone. He was the only, for lack of a better term, he was the only Jew. He was the only monotheist. He wasn't really a Jew. He wasn't a Noahide either. He had a different covenant. He was in the Abrahamic covenant, which is the first step toward the Mosaic covenant, out of the Noahide covenant. So, since to accomplish these things on earth, you need the whole Jewish people to be unified to celebrate a holiday. And the way that we have the holidays, God gives those keys into our hands, through Kedushas Levi, etc. Now it's not the time to talk about that, but that we understand that idea. People know a little bit how to learn, know what I'm talking about. Avram Avinu, though, was the whole Klal Yisrael. He was the embodiment of the people of God as one human being, as an individual. So Avram Avinu was able to make every day Yom Tov on this earth, not just in the higher world. That he aroused whatever attribute we're talking about, love of God, fear of God, and he made it Yom Tov. He was an individual and he was able to arouse these attributes and make it Yom Tov here. So Avram Avinu was able to make one day could be two holidays on the same day simultaneously, because he's simultaneously loving and fearing God. He was loving God, he's making Pesach. But the same day he's fearing God, he's making Yom Kippur. And so simultaneously he's experiencing Pesach and Yom Kippur. So whatever level he was accomplishing, whatever he accomplished in the higher worlds, he made it there. That whatever he accomplished in the higher worlds, which we could do, we can make in the higher worlds, but we can't make it Pesach here unless it's actually Pesach. We can't make it Yom Kippur here unless it's actually Yom Kippur, right? Because the whole Klal Yisrael has to be united. But Avram Avinu, since he was the whole Klal Yisrael, whatever he did in the higher worlds, that's what he was doing here. So then he was able to bring this Kevin Shahuaya Echad, because he was the only one. So there's no steer to say that Avram Avinu circumcised himself on Pesach, but also circumcised himself on Yom Kippur. Meaning to say, when he circumcised himself, he was doing so with love of God and fear of God. So that day, it could have been any day. It could have been, December, November, it could be any time of the year. But for Avram Avinu, it was Pesach, and for Avram Avinu, it was Yom Kippur. V'chein Mavar Yerushalmi. This is part of the Yerushalmi and Pesachim. Perek Daled Halacha Aleph. Shekol Echad B'Yoyim Shehevi Korban Hayel Lo Yom Tov. We know this halacha that when any Jew would go bring a korban, that was Yom Tov for him. Meaning he would wear Yom Tov clothes. He would be experiencing Yom Tov when he was bringing a korban. Machma shebekorban hayim ara oisa bechina v'hayachal ahavi oisa bechina afilu b'asiyah asas Yom Tov. Meaning, the same way we're talking about Shavuot brachas, right? The whole week of Shavuot brachas is the Indian of Yom Tov for the Chassan and Kala. So the Chassan wears a shtreimel or whatever his big day Shabbos are all week long, right? For Shavuot brachas. So the same thing, you bring a korban, you'd wear a shtreimel or whatever, I don't mean they wore shtreimelach back then. But I'm saying whatever their Shabbos clothes were, the Yom Tov clothes were, when they would bring a korban, they would wear that, right? And so for them, they were able to make it a personal Yom Tov. So this answers this kasha Tosfos has why we don't make a bracha on besamim motzei Yom Tov. So how do we explain this? We need of our koinem al Shabbos and mevin chatas. So first we have to understand, to answer this question, to make this correlation, it's an interesting thing, right? The musaf of Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh has a sin offering, a communal sin offering, as the additional, pretty much any day that there's musaf except for Shabbos. But Shabbos, there's no chatas. So why is there no chatas on Shabbos? Why is there no sin offering on Shabbos, on the Sabbath? Right? Right? We say in our liturgy that we have the goats for the sin offering to atone. So the answer is, what the Chazal explain, is that the Sabbath it's set. We don't decide when it's Shabbos, right? Rosh Chodesh v'Yom Tov Yisrael Mekadosh Lahu. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov, and that's what we were discussing before, and we were hinting to this. I didn't learn this ahead, but I made that connection. The Tzushdel there. That on Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov, pretty much the Jewish people decide when Rosh Chodesh is. In the old days, they would announce every month when's Rosh Chodesh, and now we have a calendar, but we set the calendar to decide when Rosh Chodesh is, and that affects when Yom Tov is. And that's why in our liturgy, we have the words Mekadesh Shabbos, that God sanctifies the Sabbath. We also have in the liturgy, for the holidays in Rosh Chodesh, is Mekadesh Yisrael v'zmanim, Mekadesh Yisrael Rosh Chadashim v'chulu, Mekadesh Shabbos v'Yom Kippurim, Mekadesh Shabbos v'Yom Zikaron. Mekadesh Yisrael v'zmanim. That Shabbos is sanctified independently, but Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh is sanctified through the Klal Yisrael, through the Jewish people, through the pious community. And specifically through, there's a point in that specifically through the devotion. I think I could pause this. That specifically through the pious community, through the authentic Jewish community that are true to the words of Chazal and true to the halachas made by the Sanhedrin, that is where the Kedusha of the Yom Tovim come from. Meaning the koifrim, the heretics, do not have the koyach to be mekadesh the Yom Tovim. It's an important point. Meaning, if the Sadducees, if they made a different day to be a Yontiv. They made Rosh Chodesh in a different day. That was not the Kedusha of what we say of Mekadesh Yisrael V'Zmanim. The Kedusha could only be implemented through, meaning that, again, this is a point that I make constantly, that Judaism is not racist. It's not just being born Jewish. It's the devotion to the word in the way that Chazal understand it. That is the only way. And that's where all the Kedusha lies. Anyway, Rosh Chodesh and Yontiv, the Jewish people, meaning the pious Jewish people, are the ones who are Mekadesh. So the Klal Yisrael is Mekadesh, the Zmanim, right? But Shabbos, Ki Shabbos Hu Esaros Elyon. Shabbos comes directly from God. So in our liturgy, we express that, Mekadesh HaShabbos. And if Shabbos, like Shvishal Pesach, this year is going to be Shabbos, so in our liturgy we say, Mekadesh HaShabbos V'Yisrael V'Zmanim, that the Kedusha of Yisrael comes from the Kedusha of Shabbos, and the Kedusha of Zmanim comes from the Kedusha of Yisrael. That the holiness of the Jewish people comes from the holiness of the Sabbath, and the holiness of the holidays comes from the holiness of the Jewish people. So it goes through a step-by-step process of the sanctification of that God grants the Sabbath, and that grants a sanctification to the Jewish people, which grants a sanctification to the appointed seasons, to the holidays. Of course, it's all from God, but this is the Shtalshlus Advarim. This is the way that we experience it. Anyway, V'yom Tov Rosh Chodesh Hu Esaros HaTachton. The holidays and Rosh Chodesh, that is a lower awakening. Be'esh Yisrael Yesh Lehem Esaros HaTachton L'Kadosh HaChodesh Hein B'yom HaChaf Tes Hein B'yom HaLamed B'y V'yom Mekadosh HaChodesh V'yom Tov. So meaning when the Jewish people have that lower awakening, that lower arousal, that God, instead of directly from heaven down to us, He works within us to sanctify these days and gives us the energy to sanctify these days. When the Jewish people make the decision whether or not to make Rosh Chodesh on the 29th day or the 30th day, there's that leeway one day or the other. And on that day we sanctify the month, and therefore the holidays that fall in the month are decided by that. Meaning that if Pesach is the 15th day of Nisan, that depends when is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Tefi Mashiro Chachmei Ador Lefi Bechina Lekadosh Hayom B'Yisei Bechina Kadei Lekadosh Yom Tov B'Yisei Yom Aroi L'Yisei Bechina Mechavenes Olav. And this is in accordance with that which the sages of the generation, according to their levels, to sanctify the day, and that level, in order to sanctify the holiday on that day that's worthy to that level, which is appointed and attached to and focused on that. But the truth is, a person can always attach himself to that lower awakening on that level any time of the year. Tainu, meaning, oy bechinas hav, oy bechinas a year, oy bechinas a taina gavel Shabbos hu esaros elyon ve'enu yochel l'kash atzmei boy. So Yontiv, you can attach yourself to Yontiv any time of the year, but Shabbos is something that's special. You cannot attach yourself to Shabbos if it's not really Shabbos. Of course, we connect to Shabbos in the sense of Hayom, Revi b'Shabbos. That connection we do have to the Shabbos. But the Shabbos itself, we can attach to the connection of Shabbos that is in that day, but it's not going to mamish be Shabbos, right? This is a whole story. Seems to be maybe a stira. Sometimes they say that it was the Rebbe Zishan, the Rebbe Melech, and sometimes they say it was the Haflon, the Rebbe Shmelke. whoever it was, that there was this Indian by the tzaddikim. There's a story, but we're not going to get into that, about how they feared Shabbos stick in the middle of the week, and they were a little bit worried about that, and they went to the Maggid to ask the Rebbe Bear. We don't have time to tell this story right now. But anyway, you can't really make it Shabbos when it's not Shabbos, and you can't even connect to Shabbos in a way that you can connect to you cannot connect to Shabbos when it's not Shabbos the way that you can connect to Yontif when it's not Yontif. Aval Yontif Rish Chodesh Hu Aseres Atachton Yochel Adam Lakash Atzmai By La'olam Afilu Acher Yontif. So that means that the Yontif, like we say in our liturgy, V'hasienu Hashem Elokeinu Birkus Mayadecha, we ask God to bestow upon us the blessings of the seasons, meaning that those blessings remain with us. That's why we have this Inyan, for example, people keep some matzah all throughout the year as a shmira, and people keep their lulav, or their hadassim, or their ravas, or the esrog all throughout the year, because we're bringing that service throughout the year. And even there's an Inyan, Chanukah itself was an Inyan of Sukkot when it wasn't Sukkot. That's brought in the book of Maccabees, and the Sfarim Kedushim mentioned such an idea. But also the idea of people, the Mekubalim, if there's a drought, they will bring out the lulav and esrog to perform. There's a ritual to perform in order to connect to Sukkot, and this is supposed to be bringing rain, because that's the rainy season. Now we're already saying Ber Tal. It's not the rainy season now, but anyway. So back to our question here. Right after Yom Tov is called Isru Chag. The day after a holiday is called Isru Chag. Isru Chag means tying up the pilgrimage offering. But there's no Isru Shabbos. There's only Isru Chag. There's only a day after. I mean, we do have Malava Malka after Shabbos. Some people even make Malava Malka Sunday. It was an Indian by the Rebbes and Adverna and other tzaddikim. But is that a bear? But anyway, but it's not the same idea. We don't call it Isru Shabbos. We call it Malava Malka, because we know the Malka is leaving. We're being Malava the Malka. We're not being Oyser the Malka. We're not tying her up and saying you got to stay with us. Whereas the Chag, we tie up the Chag and say you got to stay here. You're not leaving. We're taking you hostage. We can't take Shabbos hostage, but we take Yom Tov hostage. That's the idea of Isru Chag. Because in Yom Tov a person can attach himself to this concept of the Yom Tov. Because Yom Tov is something that we make. It's something that's aroused from below. And that's why we make Isru Chag on motzei Yom Tov, in order to attach ourselves to this concept. And even you make a Suda on Isru Chag. Some of the tzaddikim, they put on a kolpik. It's a Yom of the Pagra, right? Towards Kushiyas a Tosfos she'ein mevarach and acher Yom Tov, ve'ein mevarach and motzei Shabbos, echal b'Yom Tov al besamim. Ki b'Yom Tov yesh neshama yisera. Or even like Lamaisa, we don't, let's say, this week, right? Or even last week, motzei Shabbos, the first Seder. But this week coming up, Shvi Shel Pesach, right? Shabbos, right? So on motzei Shvi Shel Pesach, we're going to make Havdalah. We're going to make Kiddush and Havdalah together. Yak Nahaz. In the Yak Nahaz, there's no besamim. Why not? It's motzei Shabbos, because it's Yom Tov, right? So you don't make a bracha on the besamim, because the whole idea of the bracha on the besamim is the neshama yisera is leaving, but on Shabbos it leaves. Yontif doesn't leave, right? Ki b'Yontif yesh neshama yisera, because Yontif there isn't neshama yisera. L'kachin mevarchim v'sei Shabbos chol yos b'Yontif. Mashen mevarchim v'sei Yontif atzma l'besamim mishum shebechina sheyesh l'adam b'Yontif. While yedei yisera setach niyachal adam l'kash atzma boy l'kachin tzarech l'varch l'besamim v'sei Yontif. So meaning the Yontif, if you work on it, you can make it Yontif any time. You can attach to the Yontif any time. You can essentially hold the Yontif hostage, and you don't have to leave Yontif. And the Shabbos noch Yontif is noch Yontif. And the whole idea of Sfir Sa'omer, of being essentially a type of, at least an archetype of a Chol HaMoed, according to Ramban. Meaning that when the Neshama Yisera leaves on motzei Shabbos, there's nothing we can do about it. But the Neshama Yisera Yontif, it's not that there's no Neshama Yisera of Yontif. There is Neshama Yisera of Yontif, but it doesn't have to leave. So you could keep it, and so you don't make a bracha on besamim to fortify ourselves with the loss of, to encourage ourselves because of the loss of the Neshama Yisera. Like this on Shabbos. Shabbos v'soros elyon v'chemin shiyatz Shabbos v'talig v'soros elyon v'yafshel l'adam l'kash atzmai boy v'lei b'Shabbos habashim megir soros olav elyon mechodesh. Shabbos, since it's a supernal arousal, when Shabbos leaves, it's impossible for a person to attach himself to it, except next Shabbos. Then he's going to get the new supernal arousal that'll be renewed and be brand new. That's why motzei Shabbos make a bracha to besamim. Because in Shabbos, both Shabbos and Yontif have a neshama yisera, but the neshama yisera of Shabbos is a supernal neshama yisera, and whereas the neshama yisera of Yontif is something that we create. And that attaches back to the idea that the soul is not something that's necessarily granted to us as much as something that we earn. Even the Neshama Yisera of Shabbos also is the same inyan. So even motzei Shabbos that falls on Yontif, like the Seder night, and again, we don't, even though there's discussion about L'maisa, we don't, it's not part of, and even if someone would do it separately, it's not part of the Inyan, it's not part of the Yakna Haz, right? And the same thing, this motzei Shabbos, there's no besamim, right? And it's because we're not losing, because there's the Neshama Yisera of Yontif, and there's an Inyan of the Saras Elyon and his Tzuras Tachton together, Tzuras Leila and his Lasata together. And certainly we don't make a bracha on motzei Yontif because we're not losing the Neshama Yisera of Yontif. All right, I think we're Yotzei. We're never Yotzei, but we did. I think we did some good work here. Kadosh Baruch Hu should look on us with favor for learning Torah, and we should enjoy it just for itself. And I want to thank the encouragement that people gave us. We should learn the shtickle Kedushas Levi. You have a big schar from that, and so that's a schus that's all yours. And but we should all be learning together. Mirz Hashem, like we said, we should be able to see mamish nisim in the floors. You know, we have a few minutes. Let's sing a niggin. I spent a lot of time in the chutzner of Biala, a few chutzeres of Biala. I'm not a Biala chussid. You know, my Rebbe is Kalaver Rebbe, and I follow a lot from Satmar, and really a lot of right now where my neshama is connected to my holy Zayda, the Chavos Yor, and in that way. But we. But there's one niggin that I know the Biala Rebbe's. There's I believe there's Zayda made for Yontiv from the Musaf liturgy, and I know the Biala Rebbe and Borough Park always talk about what a holy niggin this is, what a holy tune this is, and so the words are V'hoshev Kahanim Levaydosam, and it's in the liturgy, restore the priests to their work, and restore the priests to their worship, their service. Restore the Levites to their song and music, and restore the Israelites among them. And there we will ascend and be seen in the pilgrimage, and worship and prostrate ourselves before you, Almighty God. The 3 pilgrimage festivals. So I don't have the best voice, but I'm going to try to sing this tune. I think we have a whole album of Havdalah somewhere online, perhaps on the VialaRebbe.com. I should probably download it and make it a YouTube video also. Vehu shayv kohanim lavoidusam Leviyim l'shiram l'zimram Vehu shayv Yisrael le'nevayhem Vehu shayv kohanim lavoidusam Leviyim l'shiram l'zimram Vehu shayv Yisrael le'nevayhem V'sham na'aleh v'nahireh v'nishtachveh lefonecha v'shulaish p'amay regulayni V'sham na'aleh v'nahireh v'nishtachveh lefonecha v'shulaish p'amay regulayni V'hu shayv kohanim lavoidusam ba-ba-bam Leviyim l'shiram l'zimram ba-ba-bam Vehu shayv Yisrael le'nevayhem. Good Yontiv, good Moed, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, hit the bell button, all those good things, and we'll see you soon. I have to turn this off.